I often find myself lost in treasured memories of Matthew's childhood, each moment alive with laughter and warmth. My kitchen, a hub of activity, was filled with the rich aroma of homemade meals, chicken pot pie on busy weeknights, pancakes on lazy Sundays. I can still hear his small voice calling out, "Mom, when is dinner?" Those simple questions were the highlights of my day, the echoes of a love imprinted on my heart. When his father left, the world dimmed. But Matthew, my brave little boy, remained my anchor. I stretched my hands thin, working double shifts at the diner and cleaning houses just to keep our heads above water. The tips from customers supplemented bills, but the most precious currency was the bond I forged with Matthew during those long nights. We shared secrets over late-night snacks, and I relished the gleam of his eyes as I read him bedtime stories by heavily muted light. Every sacrifice tasted bittersweet. I remember once slaving over a high school project, staying up until dawn crafting a diorama of the solar system, complete with glittering stars made from construction paper. Seeing Matthew beam with pride when he presented it was worth every sleepless hour. Those moments anchored our relationship, weaving a tapestry of mutual respect and love that felt unbreakable. As time flowed, life seemed to shift. Matthew grew taller, his laughter echoed less in our small apartment. Yet I cherished every moment of his blossoming independence, his first day of high school, scoring his first goal in soccer, earning a spot in the honor roll. I convinced myself these were triumphs shared, notwithstanding the gaping absence of a fatherly presence. I managed to be both mother and father, or so I thought. When Veronica entered our lives, she was a breath of fresh air, exuding charm with every word. I welcomed her with open arms, hoping that she might fill the void of the family Matthew and I never had. Her laughter intertwined with ours, and for a fleeting moment, I savored the illusion of a complete family. For someone who had nurtured Matthew through every hardship, it was nearly perfect. Yet, as the days turned into weeks and then years, subtle changes emerged like cracks in a facade. I noticed the way Veronica commented on my cooking, hinting at her upscale preferences. "This is nice, but have you tried quinoa?" she'd say, her tone dripping with patronization as if juxtaposing my efforts with her desirable tastes. Each remark eroded my confidence bit by bit, the shared laughter between Matthew and Veronica forming an invisible wall around me. In the quiet shadows of my heart, I felt the shift, a tightening in my chest, as I began to realize that I was not only losing my son to adulthood, I was quietly losing him to her as well. The niece who once cheered me on began to make me feel increasingly invisible, especially when I noticed Matthew laugh at her jokes, his eyes sparkling with admiration that had once been reserved for me. Now I find myself looking through the snapshots of our history, with each warm memory edging closer to a past laced with melancholy. The laughter I once cherished is now a poignant reminder that family dynamics can twist with time, leaving one behind. As I hold these memories close, I sense a growing unease, a whisper of something ominous that I can no longer ignore. Little did I know, Veronica's indignity towards me would soon manifest in ways I could never foresee, overshadowing the light of all those cherished moments. But for now, I try to hold on to the pride I felt as Matthew's mother, sensing that I would need this strength for what lies ahead. Veronica's arrival in our lives felt like a refreshing breeze, sweeping away the heavy clouds of loneliness. At first, she was everything I hoped for, kind and charming. She fit seamlessly into the fabric of our family gatherings, laughing with gusto at Matthew's old childhood stories. I reveled in those moments, thinking this is what real family felt like, a a picture-perfect Thanksgiving surrounded by love and warmth. But as the days turned into months, something began to gnaw at the edges of my happiness. It started with trivial comments, small jabs that cut deeper than I'd care to admit. "Oh, Lila, I'd never let my kids eat that much sugar." Veronica's casual dismissal of my baking at a birthday party stung like a slap, the laughter of guests ringing hollow in my ears. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that every young bride is eager to establish her own family traditions. Then there were the holidays, those cherished times when we came together, seemingly so uncomplicated. We'd gather around the dining table, its surface adorned with my meticulously prepared dishes, roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and my famous pumpkin pie. But Veronica began to pepper those evenings with remarks that chipped away at my spirit. "Have you thought about adopting a more modern menu, Lila? Something lighter?" she'd suggest while Matthew nodded, an absent agreement that felt like betrayal. It all felt so subtle. The way she positioned herself between Matthew and me, the way she spoke over me when I shared stories. There was an underlying current in her laughter, a derisive edge that made me question everything I had done for my boy. Little by little, it was as if she was drafting a new narrative, where I was an unnecessary footnote. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun dip low in the sky, I replayed the recent family gathering in my head. I recalled sitting silently while Veronica and Matthew exchanged glances that held secrets I was not privy to. There was a moment when Matthew shared one of his favorite childhood stories, and with confidence he turned to Veronica. I miss those days. The way her eyes sparkled made them seem like co-conspirators. A sharp pang of jealousy shot through me. How could they look at each other like that, while I felt increasingly like a ghost? The isolation crept deeper, encircling me in a relentless grip. Even the kids, my beloved Emma and Jake, seemed to fuse their loyalty to Veronica as they grew older. They'd rush to her for stories and hugs, while I stood on the periphery, their sweet laughter echoing in the distance like a reminder of what I was slowly losing. The joy we once shared was fading, replaced by a void as thick as fog. Veronica would sometimes smirk as she shared her culinary triumphs with Matthew. "Lila, you should really try this recipe I found for quinoa salad. It's so much better than the usual." My heart clenched. The smile on her face felt almost mocking as it layered shame upon my pride. I was the one who had taught him to cook, who stood by him in the kitchen as he learned each slice and stir. Yet here she was, undermining not just my cooking but my place in Matthew's life. I noticed small details that further fueled my discomfort. The way Veronica controlled the interactions, redirecting conversations, drawing Matthew in with inside jokes while leaving me in the shadows, was increasingly alarming. Every time I attempted to share a memory or an opinion, it felt as though I were shouting into the void, the chatter continuing without acknowledgement of my voice. The turning point came during what should have been a simple family dinner. I had invited them over, determined to reclaim some of our lost traditions. I spent which felt like endless hours preparing the meal, the scents of garlic and basil wafting through the kitchen as I set the table with my best china. I thought we could bridge the gap, rekindle the connection we once shared. But Veronica waltzed in with her signature dismissive air, commenting on the mismatched cutlery and suggesting that she prefers the sleekness of modern design. With every crinkle of her nose, I felt my heart flutter with fierce disappointment, the fragile hopes I harbored crumbling under her scrutiny. At one moment, as I offered my famous meatballs, she turned to Matthew with an exaggerated look of surprise. "Wow, you actually still eat those?" That remark festered like an untreated wound. It wasn't just a jab at my cooking, it was an erosion of my relationship with my son right in front of my eyes, and Matthew's weak chuckle only solidified my sinking heart. I could feel presence and purpose ebb away, leaving me nothing but an empty shell before her crafted narrative. As the evening wore on, I fought to keep my head above water, hiding the turmoil that churned within my chest, but each laugh shared between them drove home the point. I was slowly becoming obsolete in a family where I had once been the centerpiece. Yet, even locked within those shackles of humiliation, I held on to a stubborn flame flickering inside me, refusing to let it extinguish completely. For the love I bore for Matthew and my grandchildren was worth chasing shadows, and I knew deep down that I needed to confront this evolving chaos before I became just his mom, an insignificant title I feared would eventually define me. The days following that dinner felt heavy, thick with an unspoken tension that seeped into every corner of my home. I sensed the widening gap between Matthew and me, a chasm that Veronica delighted in deepening. The phone calls that used to flow freely were now reduced to terse texts filled with laughter and emojis that felt more like distant echoes than genuine connection. I slipped into a routine of isolation, avoiding family gatherings that no longer felt warm, but rather suffocating. Each time I thought about attending, I'd recall the previous events, the subtle glances Veronica exchanged with Matthew, the criticism veiled as concern. They haunted me like shadows, chipping away at my resolve. Matthew had always been my pride and joy, and my heart sank when I realized how easily Veronica had begun to overshadow me in his life. One sunny afternoon, while sitting in my garden, I noticed the vibrant colors of my flowers, which I lovingly tended to, contrasted sharply with my growing loneliness. I remembered how we used to garden together, Matthew obsessed with picking the ripest tomatoes. Now, even those memories felt like shards of glass cut deep when I recalled how hairline fractures began to form in our relationship. Our family gatherings shifted dramatically under Veronica's influence. I would find myself on the outskirts, striving to engage with my grandchildren. But when I looked into their excited faces, I saw flashes of confusion, as if they knew they were caught in the crossfire of loyalty. The parched air between us shifted as I witnessed their fervent attention drift solely to Veronica. The pang of invisible neglect became unbearable. It felt unthinkable that I, who had nurtured Matthew through every hardship, was now sidelined. One fateful Sunday at the park was particularly painful. As I approached the picnic area, I spotted Matthew with the kids, laughter buoyed by Veronica's gleeful voice as she regaled them with stories. In that moment, I felt like a ghost, aware of their joy, yet excluded from it. The sun seemed to wane as I listened to Veronica share parenting hacks with her friends, the children moving closer to her with each sleek laugh and exaggerated tale. My heart clenched tight as Emma's bright eyes sought her mother's approval. The little girl who once painted pictures for me, now seeking hints from Veronica instead. I returned home, battling despair, longing for the connection that had once bonded our family. Even my late-night baking sessions, where I concocted elaborate desserts in the hope of rekindling our laughter, felt like an exercise in futility. Veronica would dismiss my efforts, suggesting that she had a healthier recipe her family loved more. Each remark felt like salt to an open wound, another layer of my heart eroded under her scrutiny. One evening spent preparing a surprise for the upcoming book fair exemplified my frustration. As I pulled out my favorite cardigan, I was filled with aspirations of sharing Emma's special moments, a feeling of empowerment coursing through me. But, to my dismay, I discovered through a text from Matthew that Veronica had already taken Emma for the outing. The ache of being cast aside exploded in my chest, each heartbeat echoing in my ears, a pounding loud enough to drown out my hopes. When I made my way to the fair regardless, wanting to surprise them, I found them intertwined in their laughter, a scene meant for family, and yet there I stood, the odd one out. As I stood aside, my heart sank deeper at Emma's radiant smile directed solely towards her mother. How had it come to this? My shoulders hunched under the weight of soft, sharp glances, humiliation steadily creeping up my spine. Yet despite all of this, a tiny flicker of resolve ignited within me. I realized I needed to reclaim my visibility, my dignity that Veronica had so persistently chipped away. The driving love for Matthew and my grandchildren turned that flicker into a steady flame. I would not let these quiet humiliations diminish me. I would no longer be invisible in my own family's story. I started to formulate a plan, a strategy to slowly reclaim both my place and my voice in this reshaped family landscape. It wouldn't be easy, but I resolved to rise above the whispers, to bend but not break. The steady pulse of a new determination thrummed through me. Perhaps it was time to confront this evolving chaos instead of shying away from it, to illustrate my worth once again. As the days blurred into a cycle of invisible neglect, I turned my attention inward, dissecting the painful comments and behaviors Veronica directed my way. With each passing interaction, I silently began recording her judgments, observing the way she maneuvered her influence over Matthew and the kids. If I wanted to confront this oppression, I needed concrete evidence, a narrative that showcased not just my grievances, but the gradual erosion of our familial bonds. I became attuned to the nuances of our exchanges. There was a moment during dinner where Veronica concocted a story about her childhood, one filled with memories that felt oddly fabricated but brightly colored in her retelling. You know, my mom always made the best chicken tikka with a side of couscous, she remarked, eyes sparkling as she reveled in her recollections, seemingly unaware of my reticence. But I noticed how Matthew leaned in, hanging on every word, nodding as if her every syllable was a sacred truth. Meanwhile, I flinched inwardly, my own heartfelt stories of our family's humble beginnings flickering in the background, longing to be seen. Why hadn't I realized how unseen I had become? I vowed to pay careful attention, framing my observations as a way of piecing together the family dynamics that felt increasingly manipulated. Small outings with the kids transformed into a source of information. The Monday after the book fair, I suggested a simple ice cream outing, hoping to share something special. I packed us into the car, my heart racing with expectation, but the atmosphere felt heavy with the expectation of Veronica's looming presence. Emma and Jake chirped excitedly about their school day, yet, in the back of my mind, I recalled Veronica's retorts to my previous attempts, comments about my old-fashioned taste in desserts, how fun outings were something only she could navigate as their mother. When we arrived at the ice cream parlor, everything felt forced. I watched as the children scampered towards the colorful flavors, momentarily free and innocent. I tried to coax them into recounting their lives. Friendship dynamics and school triumphs flowed from their lips, but the anticipation fizzled into a quiet ache as they shared little snippets about their mother. Veronica said we should try avocado ice cream next time. Words became needles, pricking the surface of my heart. With every mention of Veronica, my resolve stiffened. I needed to explore deeper into her influence, figuring out how to effectively confront the injustices that rolled out of her mouth so effortlessly. I took to journaling. Each night, seated at my cluttered kitchen table, I wrote with quiet urgency, chronicling incidents, the dinner critiques, the casual jabs about my outdated parenting skills, the ways in which Matthew's laughter had begun to exclude me. Gathering evidence not only turned into a means of defense but morphed into an act of empowerment. It felt like a quiet revolution within my home, each word sharpening my perspective. I began layering evidence of my invisibility, focusing on the moments where I felt cornered, diminished. The turning point arrived one crisp Saturday morning when Veronica invited us all to her home for brunch. I brushed off the familiar pang of apprehension as I donned my favorite dress, a simple navy blue that evoked strength and held fond memories of happier afternoons. This time, I would confront her directly. It was no longer just about gathering notes in a diary. I needed to unravel the facade Veronica had constructed around our family and reclaim my dignity. When we arrived at her pristine modern kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirled through the air, betraying the vibrant chaos of colors from the lavish spread on the table. I felt an undercurrent of intimidation washing over me, but clung tight to my resolve. The laughter from Matthew and the kids intermingled like a song, but I would not remain a silent witness any longer. Veronica began making comments about my cooking again, offering Matthew tidbits of her own meal prepping strategies that felt underhanded. "You should get on board with meal kits. They save so much time," she teased, nudging me lightly as if to diffuse her barb. But I noticed Matthew chime in with an affirmation that cut deeper than any sharp words. In that moment, I saw red. The words swirled and coiled within me like a storm ready to break. I inhaled deeply, aligning my thoughts with the collected observations. This was my moment. "Veronica," I began, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I appreciate your enthusiasm for meal kits, but I have my own ways of doing things. I've spent years carving our family traditions, and I'd like for you to respect that." The room fell silent. The kids looked up from their plates, eyes wide, while Matthew searched my face, a whirlwind of confusion and surprise written across his features. I felt an unfamiliar strength surge forward, a realization that I had spent so long bowing to Veronica that I had nearly allowed my identity to dissolve. My heart raced but steadied as I continued. "You bring so much into our lives, and I celebrate that. Yet I must stand firm on my own contributions too." I could see the flicker of irritation flare in Veronica's eyes momentarily, a breach in her facade, but she quickly composed herself, covering it with a practiced smile. "Of course, Lila, I just thought we were all trying to evolve together," she replied. Each word dripped in condescension and feigned innocence. But something shifted. I was ready to expose her tactics as a way of solidifying my own identity within this new family structure. It wouldn't be easy, but I had laid the groundwork for reclaiming my space, and her undercurrents would no longer blindside me. As the brunch continued, I maintained my composure, drawing on renewed sly confidence, delivering responses to her treble jabs with grace. There I stood, not just Matthew's mom, but a woman resurrecting from the ashes, ready to command her place in the spotlight. The day after brunch, the atmosphere in my home was charged with a mix of hope and lingering anxiety. I replayed the confrontation over and over in my mind, every detail still fresh. I recalled the moment I finally voiced my needs, feeling as if I had opened a door I had long kept locked, but the aftershocks of my words echoed loudly as I anticipated how Veronica would react in the future. I was now on her radar, and I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling that she wouldn't take my defiance lightly. Days turned into weeks, and the tension between us twisted like a taut string ready to snap. I noticed Veronica's subtle attempts to undermine the progress I had made. Minor confrontations became sharper. She would ask Matthew questions about plans, daring me to engage. If I chimed in, she would deftly redirect the conversation back to herself, an artful dismissal that felt rehearsed, a show I was committed to disrupting. I spent many nights planning my responses, preparing for our next interaction as if I were a soldier heading back to battle. The kitchen table became my safe space for not only journaling but also practicing how to respond with dignity when Veronica next attempted to minimize me. I knew my family played a role in this unfolding drama, and it would be key to draw Matthew back toward me, inch by precious inch. During one afternoon, while baking a batch of cookies for the kids, an idea began to take shape. I decided to host a family game night, something low-key yet inviting, an opportunity to create a shared experience that would allow me to showcase my value. I pulled out my recipe book, scouring through the notes I'd penned over the years, shared games and laughter around the table, fragile anchors within our family. As I sent out the invitations, I felt a surge of hope. Matthew replied enthusiastically, and even the kids' radiant responses fueled my mission. However, a flicker of doubt gnawed at me when I considered how Veronica would handle it. She would likely view the evening as an affront to her authority, encroach on my time with the kids, and try to seize control. But I steeled myself. I couldn't retreat any longer. The night of the event arrived, and I spent the entire day preparing. I laid out a colorful spread of snacks, hoping to bring joy and nostalgia back to our gatherings. The smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies mingled in the air, wrapping the room in warmth reminiscent of my own childhood memories. I remembered moments filled with laughter as we spent hours playing Monopoly and making fun of silly house rules, where I'd once been the storyteller of our family. Matthew arrived with the kids, all smiles and giggles, seemingly oblivious to the tension that had come to define our family dynamics. I greeted them with a hug, the children diving straight for the cookie platter. But there, in the doorway, stood Veronica, an embodiment of poise in her perfectly coordinated outfit, her presence immediately chilling the air. I pretended not to notice the slight smirk that curled at her lips, the way she scanned the room assessing the situation. Yet, I sensed something in my gut, a reassurance stemming from my resolve. During the first couple of games, I made a concentrated effort to reclaim my space. I engaged the kids in conversations, encouraging their imaginations to bloom while effortlessly diverting Veronica's cutting remarks back onto her. "Anyone got any winning strategies?" I asked after Matthew and the kids spent a few minutes figuring something out while vying fiercely for victory in Uno. "Jake, if you have that 7, you should definitely play it." I made sure to praise their efforts and give them opportunities to shine, but Veronica was relentless. "Are you sure that's how you interpret the rules, Lila? I think it's usually advisable to—" Her voice dripped with a casual disdain, but I matched it with grace, maintaining my smile. "Actually, I love how everyone has their unique flair for interpreting the rules," I countered, finding strength in the words I chose to amplify the joy in the room. "Did you know that rules always evolve in family games? What matters is everyone has fun." As the games wore on, I began to feel a shift. There were glimmers in Matthew's eyes when he looked back at me, enjoying the playful interchanges I maintained with the kids. Short laughter threaded through the air, lightening the mood, and I caught sight of the kids rallying around me as if I had become their ringleader. But then it happened. During the next round, I caught Veronica's eye, her irritation boiling under the surface. "You have such a way of manipulating the game here, don't you?" she said sharply, her voice lifting an octave, an accusation veiled beneath a thin layer of concern. I took a step forward. Veronica, manipulating someone is forcing them to play a game they aren't comfortable with. Families should uplift and enjoy one another, not undermine. The room grew still. For an instant, I feared her retaliation, her look about to erupt into a crescendo of chaos. But it didn't come. Instead, Matthew interjected. Mom, you're right. We're just having fun. The kids are loving this. Can't we just enjoy it? Veronica's eyes narrowed, but she fell silent. The tension blended into a certain ambiguity, where her responses hung in the balance of not wanting to be seen as cruel, but battling to maintain her grip on the family's narrative. My heart lifted. Perhaps I wasn't alone in this. When the night ended, something in the air felt different. I could sense the lingering unease, but it was balanced against the joy we had shared. Matthew's laughter and the children's excitement were now woven into a larger tapestry of family history, one that I had just begun to alter. After the others rolled out, I could feel the confrontation looming ahead. I couldn't rest now. The time had come to seek a dialogue with Matthew. I needed him to hear my side, to comprehend how deeply Veronica's manipulations had affected not only me, but the family he cherished. That vulnerable ache in my heart transformed into a sturdy purpose. Sitting on that edge of newfound strength, I knew it was time to have that talk. It was time to broaden the narrative and stand firm on my own terms. The house was quiet when Matthew and the kids left. The chaotic laughter faded into the echoes of our memories, leaving behind a palpable stillness, punctuated only by the ticking clock on the wall. I stood in the kitchen, wrapping my fingers around the cool ceramic of my coffee mug. My heart pounded. I could feel the weight of what needed to happen pushing against my chest. It was time to confront Matthew, time to pull back the curtain on the family dynamic I suspected he didn't fully understand. I waited until the late evening settled into its hush, the summer twilight casting a gentle glow on the kitchen. Finally, as I heard the familiar sound of his shoes against the hardwood floor, my heart raced. I prepared for the first words to leave my mouth, intending to weave through grace and certainty rather than resentment. "Hey, Mom," Matthew greeted me, his joviality still lingering as he entered the kitchen, a piece of carelessly crumpled paper tucked in his pocket, likely remnants from the night. What a night! The kids loved it. With each passing moment, the air felt heavier, almost sagging under the weight of unsaid truths. "I'm glad they had fun, Matthew. They deserved it," I began, carefully timing my next words. "I wanted to talk to you about Veronica." He stiffened slightly, confusion flickering across his features. "What about her?" I searched his eyes, steeling myself against the whirlwind of emotions tumbling within me. "I've felt pretty sidelined lately. I know she adds some excitement to our family dynamic, but it seems like more often than not, she dismisses my role in your life and it's hurting me." "Oh, what do you mean?" He looked puzzled, genuinely trying to understand. That was a step forward. He was listening. "During our brunch, she snaked her way into our dynamics," I continued, my voice steady. "She tries to control conversations, to belittle my contributions, while continually positioning herself as the perfect mother. It's almost like she undermines who I am." Matthew's brow furrowed as he shifted uncomfortably, yet I saw it, a glimmer of awareness sparking in the depths of his eyes. "Mom, I never thought of it like that. She has a certain way of, well, I guess she does tend to dominate the conversation." I took a breath, the momentum lifting my spirits. "I am your mother. I've worked hard to establish our family's traditions, to build memories with you, and now with the kids. But every time she diminishes my worth, I feel like I'm losing my space in our lives. I just want you to understand how her behavior affects me." I'm worried about what they might perceive. Matthew's gaze drifted away, his thoughts wrestling to take shape. I do see where you're coming from. He started slowly, the weight multiplying in the room. It kind of makes sense. Sometimes I feel stuck between. That's precisely it, Matthew. My voice softened, but urgency laced my words. You don't have to feel caught in the middle. I know the kids adore you. They adore both of us. But it's important for them to understand that love doesn't diminish my role, nor does it entitle Veronica to push me aside. I hope you can help me showcase that. He seemed to grapple with my words, wrestling with the reality of our situation. I watched his gears turn, the growing tension breaking across his features. I guess I haven't considered what this is doing to you, he said finally, gently lowering his voice. And I'm sorry you felt that way. Joyce, the admission grounded me, yet I felt a knot of apprehension unfurling in my stomach. This isn't just about my feelings, Matthew. It's about family dynamics shifting in a way that could alienate us all. I hesitated, searching his face for signs of understanding. It's about returning to balance. I can talk to her, he began, but a pang of reluctance held me back. This wasn't about simply throwing Veronica under the bus. It was more complex than that, woven with nuances. No, I interrupted gently, not wanting to cast her in an oblique role of villainy. I'm not asking you to confront her. It's more about becoming aware of the ways both of you seem to create friction unintentionally. I paused, swallowing hard before pressing on. I just want you to see what happens in the moments when I feel invisible. Matthew nodded, weighing my words as silence taken root again, heavy yet potent. I appreciate you opening up to me like this, he said, his voice sincere, almost vulnerable. I'll pay more attention. I tucked my hair behind my ear, heartening at his responsiveness. All I want is to be included, to exist in our family space because I love you, Matthew. I want us to thrive as a family together. The warmth in the room radiated, but I couldn't shake the final edges of vulnerability I bore. Fear still lingered like a watchful ghost, shaping the path ahead. Can you promise me that no matter what happens, you'll always be my advocate? I promise, Mom. His assurance felt solid and comforting, even as lingering anxiety threaded the air. I took a deep breath, gratitude washing over me. Not fear, but hope and cross-connection began to weave tightly, healing the seams of our family's fabric that had threatened to fray. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We exchanged smiles laden with layers of understanding, but even as I felt those barriers shifting, I couldn't disregard Veronica's influence completely. I knew the confrontation wouldn't end here. Knowing her nature could never remain stagnant. This was merely the beginning, but now Matthew had the groundwork to forge a different narrative. With the house settling into sleep, I took comfort from my newfound voice, the evening solidifying my resolve to embrace this intricate tapestry with open arms. Change was ongoing, but it now bore the imprints of a new story waiting to unravel, and I remained steadfastly prepared for the journey that lay ahead. Days slipped into weeks, each one filled with a mix of hope and unease as I cautiously maneuvered through the evolving landscape of my family. I kept hold of my resolve, but I was acutely aware that Veronica remained an ever-present shadow, waiting for her moment to reclaim dominance. Finally, the long-awaited day of Matthew's birthday arrived. Following our cherished family tradition, we planned a gathering at the park, a place where laughter and joy filled the air. I poured my heart into the preparation, packing picnic baskets with homemade delights, each dish designed to reflect my love and care. The centerpiece was a lovingly baked chocolate cake, a tangible reminder of my commitment to family. As we arrived at the park, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Children scattered about with glee, and I felt a flutter of excitement as I caught Matthew's radiant smile while he played with the kids. But just as my spirits lifted, I spotted Veronica entering, arms laden with store-bought cupcakes and bright party decorations. My heart sank. "Look who's here," she announced chirpily, invading the space like a whirlwind as Matthew rushed to embrace her. The children dove toward her, faces alight with the thrill of surprise, welcoming her like a beacon of fun. It was disheartening to witness my efforts overshadowed, and I steadied myself to counteract the subsequent tide. Despite my efforts to assert myself, when it came time to cut the cake, I summoned every ounce of courage. "Let's take a moment to appreciate everything Matthew means to us," I said, hoping to draw everyone's attention back to the essence of the day. Kids paused from their games, adults shifted in their seats, and I felt the energy briefly swell around me. But before I could speak further, Veronica interjected with an authoritative laugh. "Oh, come on, Lila. That cake will ruin our appetites." Her tone was lightly mocking, turning heads away from me. It felt as if the air had been sucked out of the gathering. I steeled myself against the encroaching frustration twisting in my gut. "Veronica," I said firmly, choosing my words carefully, "this celebration is about more than just the food. It's about sharing love and meaningful moments as a family." The atmosphere shifted as I locked eyes with Matthew. His expression was one of confusion, swinging between loyalty to his wife and the instinct to support his mother. My heart raced. I prayed for him to step forward. "Mom is right," he declared, his voice carrying a weight of newfound understanding. "We should celebrate together. It's not just about what we eat." A ripple of surprise crossed the guests, and I felt the tension electrify the space. Veronica's perfect smile faltered. Her mask of superiority momentarily cracked. "We're enjoying the day, Matthew," she responded, though her words held less control than before. With my spirit lifted, I took a deep breath, letting the energy flow through me. "I just want this day to be special for everyone," I continued, feeling the tension shift from heavy to something lighter. Family moments should uplift and connect us, not push anyone aside. The gravity of my statement hung in the air, inviting the ambivalence of each person's thoughts to come to the surface. I noticed various expressions washing over my family's faces: contemplation, surprise, and ultimately agreement. Then Matthew turned to me, his eyes softer, bridging the gap. "I want us to be close, Mom," he said genuinely. "Let's make that happen together." In that heartbeat, Veronica's veneer of control began to shatter. The laughter and camaraderie that followed felt different, echoing a shift toward unity rather than division. I held on to the mantra that had guided me: "They can mute me at the table, never in my heart." As the gathering found its rhythm again, I felt empowered. It was a reminder that I could reclaim my space within this family. The veil separating me from my identity was slowly lifting, making room for a resounding truth. I was part of this narrative. The day unfolded, laughter filling the air, and I understood that this moment was just the beginning of a renewed family dynamic. I was determined to continue nurturing our connections, allowing the bonds to deepen and flourish, reinforcing the narrative we would all contribute to together. As the sun dipped lower and shadows lengthened, I remained resolute, grounded in my role as a mother who could lead her family toward a positive, unified future.